welcome to the Car Sim and Race Driver Show, presented by Hugh Hattrick. Here at Bathurst in the Forest, my very special guest, Basic Ollie, Rascal, Rabbit, Josh Martin. It's great to have you back on the show. Drive fast and try not to crash. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Car Sim and Race Driver Show. It may be February, it may even be snowing wherever you are, but tonight it's sunny as we have Paul Walsh, the commentator and GT Sport sim racer. Welcome to the show, Paul. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing really well, thank you, Hugh. I'm very happy to be here as well, despite all the heavy winds, the sleet, the snow, and pretty much everything we've had in this February so far in the UK. How about yourself?
Yeah, very good. Thanks. I've survived the winds and all the kind of things that's been going on, and even managed to get a day off from bus driving to be able to fit in an interview like we have here tonight. So that's fantastic to have you on the show. And the question starts, as I do with all of my guests: how did your sim racing and gaming career, how did it all begin?
Oh, goodness me. That's, we'll split it into two halves. So sim racing started off back in 2019. Long story short, I'd been lurking on a YouTuber's channel called Key25 or Kieran Boldrock for quite some time, watching his GT Sport content. And then I started sort of watching the FIA World Tour events back then. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to go and invest in a PS4 and I'm going to start playing Gran Turismo Sport myself. And unfortunately, then perhaps one of the darkest eras in my life came up pretty much in parallel, which was, and if anybody has ever gone to my channel, they'll see it as my channel trailer, probably one of the longest videos I've done sim racing wise, was that my dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer. Now, I shouldn't be smiling when I say this, but I say it with a tear in my eye and a bit of pride on my chest. With my dad passing away gradually from me, he motivated me to take up sim racing because we always used to play Gran Turismo a lot on PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2. And then I started to get involved in the FIA Manufacturer Series. So I raced for Honda in 2019. And in my inaugural series, when I started off as a D-rated driver, I made my way all the way up to A through the 20-race season and ended up finishing P10 for Honda, which was a star player ranking back then. And midway through the season, my dad unfortunately passed away, left us. But it galvanized me in the end to keep on going with sim racing. And from that point onwards, decided to do the 2020 Manufacturer Series with Jaguar when I actually switched from what was controller to my Thrustmaster TGT. Didn't quite hit the star player spots in 2020 for Jaguar, finished P12 in the end, but a lot of people said I could have perhaps been top 10 if I had decided to move away from cockpit view because I was a cockpit racer at that point. And sort of sim racing from there, that's sort of how I got into sim racing. I'll park that. Commentating, on the other hand, a very less tragic story, more of a bit of a series of comedies that made it happen. So commentating wise, long story short, I was watching once. One of my friends was taking part in just a casual GT Sport league, not anything major or official up for any prizes, but it was a weekly league, and myself and a couple other friends were watching them. We were watching the live broadcast. There was a commentator doing it, and I won't name names or name the series, but we were all watching them for our friend, and the commentator was, let's just say, they were about as engaging as seeing paint dry on a brick wall, if I had to be honest with you. And we kept watching week on week, so it's an extended series. But in the end, we were sort of giving up watching because the commentator was taking away all the entertainment. So I said one day, and I sort of said it as a joke, I could probably do better than what the commentator's doing. And my friends said to me, you know what, next week, do the commentary. We'll mute the actual official commentary because we'll watch it on Twitch together. And so I commentated over the full evening, and well, they were absolutely speechless come the end of it, although I had a really sore throat as well, to be fair, after commentating over an hour's worth of racing. And they said, you should really take this up because you can do it really well.
Fantastic.
And well, from that, in parallel at the same time, and this was, I've got to say, it must have been, what was it? It was probably in about the summer of 2020, I joined a community known as Drivers Room, a very active Discord community. And hello to the guys at Drivers Room if they're tuning in right now. Shout out to all you wonderful people. It was the case that they were running a number of series, and I got in touch with the organizer of a series, a chap named Gadget334. I won't use his full name on live stream, but Gadget334, he was running the Ace of Design Endurance Championship hosted by Drivers Room. And I said to him, look, I'd be very happy to live commentate. I'll volunteer my time. I'll do it completely for free and everything, because I just want to have a shot at trying to commentate. And he let me do that. So I commentated a couple of rounds. And then quite a famous face was part of that community, although he's not as much operating in the Gran Turismo sports sphere anymore. A chap named Vanquish Dawson, or we like to know him in the real world as Andrew Dawson, who is a professional karter. It is the case that he put me in touch with, now I can't remember for the life of me who was the organizer, but long story short, I think it was Club 100 were doing a team versus team championship on Gran Turismo Sport. So Dawson put me in touch with the organizers there, said that I was a really good commentator and that they could do with me as part of the commentary team for the team versus team championship. So I was one of the multiple commentators, and I commentated all the way through the pools into the final and finished the final. And then this is really where the snowball effect started to occur, because very shortly after, I had somebody reach out to me, a chap named Mark Sykes, who is one of the chief organisers at Next Gen Racing. And of course, a little bit of paid advertisement here. No, I do it for free. Mark Sykes reached out to me and said, look, really enjoyed the commentary on the Club 100. We'd love to have you as a commentator for our series. So he then asked me to commentate what was there at the time, their BMW M4 series on Gran Turismo Sports. This was coming towards the end of 2020, if I remember all the sequence of events correctly. Feels so long ago. And did that. It went down really well. Had a couple of the guys there sort of give feedback to Mark and the team to say they really enjoyed the commentary. And then I started to get involved in PC sim commentating. Now, I should be honest, this is where the momentum got so great that I sort of stumbled my way to success at this point, because going into 2021? It might have been at the tail. No, it was at the tail end of 2020. I got put in touch with a chap named Kevin Smith, another one of the organising team at Next Gen Racing. He was sort of right. Well, we're going to be hosting a league in collaboration with the SimGrid and Coach Dave Academy. But before we do that, we want to spur up some interest. So we want to hold a couple of sort of race events, just one-off events, and we'd like you to commentate on them. And this was sort of my job interview as well, in a way, to see if I could do it on PC. So you can imagine, I've been doing all my commentating on what was PlayStation 4. I've been doing it sat in my SimRig chair in a completely different room at the time, hunched over like this with a keyboard, trying to commentate at the same time. And now I'm able to sit in a sort of desk chair and do the commentary. But the thing is, I wouldn't know if my PC could handle a set of course of competition. I didn't know how to set things up from a perspective of OBS. And I had a week. So I had to quickly go and buy a set of course of competition. I had to get all the DLC. I had to get it all set up. And then on the day that I was meant to be doing the event, I tried joining the server as a sort of test to make sure I could join and spectate it. And it says I needed a safety rating.
Oh,
and
no.
I thought to myself, now how do I get a safety rating? Quick Google. You've got to do a load of driving on a set of course of competition. I've got 2 hours before I've got to commentate. Okay, well, I can't hook the rig up to, I can't hook the sim rig up to the PC because they're in two entirely different rooms. They're now in one room, but back then they're in two separate rooms. So I was sort of, okay, what do I do? So I quickly scoured through the house, found a really old manky Xbox controller where it's got bits of dirt all over it, where I've grabbed it over the years and it's gathered all dust. I'm sort of quickly racing through all the sort of practice and whatnot to try to get a sportsmanship rating. And then with 10 minutes to go before I'm meant to be commentating, it says you've got a sportsmanship you've unlocked your sportsmanship, it's up to 6. And I looked at the server, sportsmanship required 1. I was sort of, right, let's go, let's commentate.
Yeah, you've got it now.
And from that point onwards, the test event went fantastically. There were a couple of moments where things went a bit wrong. I butchered quite a few people's names, or what we like to refer to now as Walshisms, like Murrayisms, back when the legendary Murray Walker used to commentate. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. And major inspiration to myself, to be honest, but a bit more on that later. But yeah, did the first test event. That went down very well. And then they hosted another test event, which went even better. And then while I've been commentating there, Next Gen's a set, of course, a competition series on PC, pretty much since what would be late 2020 going through all of 2021 and now into 2022. And right now I'm commentating their world tour. And then the sort of final part of the trio in terms of commentating on iRacing, that came about through Next Gen again, through the simple reason they said, well, you commentate ACC, can you commentate iRacing? And well, I thought, you know what? Why not? Let's just give it a shot. And with iRacing, things went relatively okay at first. The first season I commentated on went absolutely fine. The second season, however, because the grid was 60 cars and my PC, all the parts in my PC that I was using then, and I've moved on to a new PC, were all 5+ years old, my PC started to show signs of perhaps it's time to replace everything. But we had to do some magical wizardry with regards to commentating to get it to work. And the long story short, the wizardry was that I was covering 2 race groups that ran races on the exact same night, on the exact same time, and I had to cover one the next day as a replay, and the other lives. We just switched them around, and that seemed to save any issues. But that's really how I got to commentate. It was through literally just me saying to somebody, "Yeah, I can probably do a better job," and then somebody saying, "Well, if you think you can, prove you can." And then from that point onwards, it's just rolled on.
Yeah, well, I can tell in your voice you've got a real enthusiasm. And I think that's one of the key things, isn't it? It comes over that to describe a race and an event like that, people want someone who they know that they are definitely engaged with the racing. I mean, we have Andrew and I, and you'll see him as Rue's Racing Rambles there in the chat. When we commentate on Taya and stuff, quite often it's very easy to go away if it's a quiet point in the race because it's an hour-long race. Sometimes we all get distracted and end up talking about goodness knows what. But then we'll bring it back. We'll somehow manage to bring it back when there's overtakes and other kind of things that come into it. But you were telling us in the kind of pre-show build-up that you've got some good stories as to the highlights and maybe the things that probably cause almost disaster in the races. It'd be good to hear some of those stories.
So I'll start off with the longest race I've ever commentated on. It's quite recent, in fact, and well, I'm looking forward to doing more work with a group called ERS, or the European Racing Series on ACC. As time goes on, we're working on arranging something at the moment for later this year. But long story short, they've recently kicked off what is their World Endurance Series, and the races are from 6 to 12 hours long. And well, I had signed up to commentate the season opener, the 6 hours of Imola, and I'd been told well in advance there's going to be a co-commentator, so you'll be sharing commentary responsibilities, because the longest race I'd ever commentated on up to that point were 3 hours long in a single stint by myself. So 6 hours is double that length, and 3 hours is painful enough in terms on the vocal cords. Well, it turns out literally on the day that I'm meant to be commentating the 6 hours, I suddenly get told, by the way, you're going to be commentating by yourself for 6 hours. And I was just sort of sat there thinking, okay, right, we're going to do this. And so the way it worked out, it worked out really well in the end. I had to make a load of different adjustments. I'd already prepared a sort of load of things to talk about on a separate monitor, sort of in the quiet moments, but that wasn't enough to fill out the 6 hours. I thought my voice is going to be completely wrecked after 3 hours. So I had to take the microphone, which you see here, and put it really nice and close to my mouth. And I was actually speaking like this all the way through, but because the microphone was very close, it was the case that it sounded as though I was actually talking like I am now. Managed to make it through, and the only break I had was literally a quick 2-minute toilet break. Otherwise, it was 5 hours and 58 minutes of me sat there, and in the end, I was just sort of absolutely drained. But it was absolutely fantastic, and that was one of the biggest challenges. And afterwards, I had messages from the organisers and from people saying, "How on earth can you still be talking after 6 hours?" Well, it was 7 hours really because of the pre-roll and the post-show.
Yeah, no, that is something. Do you have some water or anything you can kind of drink to try and keep your kind of throat hydrated and things?
Oh, definitely. I had a whole flask of water by the side of me. Even that went dry. So midway through the toilet break, I had to quickly run downstairs, turn the sink on. And, well, unfortunately, it was the case that the water was hot because living with my mum at the moment, it was a situation. She'd just washed the dishes and I'd had no time to make the water go cold. So I was drinking warm water, which wasn't nice. That sounds like where everything could go wrong, it did go wrong. But you managed to kind of keep it going through the whole thing. But no, because I mean that's one of the hardest things, because I know from some of the guys be watching, and we'll watch this later on as well, because there's so many leagues that have been set up and people trying to get into commentary and trying to be able to do it properly. It's what would you say is the main skill you need to have to be a good commentator? So I would say the main skill you need to have is being spontaneous in what you say. So
Yeah,
the way I would think about it is when you watch something back on TV, because this is how I practice technique. And funny enough, this is how when I started to take it more seriously as a hobby. When I drive, because I drive actively every couple of days, and I used to do a lot more driving before COVID-19 came and locked us all down.
mm,
What I used to do is sort of talk about events that are happening around me. So if I felt that somebody in front of me was going to be braking too late into a roundabout or something, or that I could commentate on it, and it's being able to observe what's happening and then being able to
yeah,
tell the story or craft the story out of it. That I think is the art as the commentator. But at the same time, if nothing's happening, you have to, you have to sell it to an extent. It's
yeah,
also one of those situations whereby I wouldn't try and oversell the fact that nothing's happening. If nothing's happening, just find
yeah,
something to talk about, or talk about, say, strategy that's playing out in the race, or alternatively, little things you may have noticed, or things for people to watch out for in 10 minutes' time when you think stuff could
yeah,
occur. And I think that's the biggest challenge, is being able to improvise on the spot, because it doesn't matter how many notes you make before a race. Sim racing, much like real world racing, it's not scripted. Although some people would say that certain races are rigged in the real world. I mean, we have to look at Formula One in
yeah,
2021. A lot of
yeah,
people would
yeah,
say that it was rigged in some regards.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Tinfoil hat conspiracies on, but you just have to. That's the thing. Anything can happen over the course, and particularly in endurance races, you could have someone who's leading the race by over the best part of a minute compared to the rest of the field, just to have them bin
yeah.
it in the final 30 seconds of the race, and you can't tell that's going to happen. So you've got to be ready for it.
Yeah. I always remember. I think it was the French Grand Prix, way back in 1993. I think it was, or thereabouts, 92, 93. And it was a very quiet race. Not much was happening. And so James Hunt decided to come on and say, it must have been 92, I think. And he had spoken to Ayrton Senna before the race. And Senna had said, I want you to to announce this, that I will drive for Williams for free at some point
Yes.
during the race. And of course, in a quiet point, I remember Murray Walker says, then James Hunt dropped a bombshell. And he said, of course, Ayrton Senna has said to me today that he will drive for Frank Williams for free, just so he can drive alongside Alain Prost. And of course, immediately everything just blew up. I mean, in today's age, you can imagine the Twitter and all the whole thing would just go mental, and that kind of thing. As you say, you've got to come up with a story or something that's about to happen to make the race look good. So, do you have any kind of inspirations from the past as to how you kind of model your commentating kind of strategy and things?
So, as I said earlier, my biggest inspiration would be Murray Walker, because, and
Yeah.
when I grew up, so I was born in '93. So when I was very young, I used to watch the Formula One sat on my dad's lap, and this was when I was sort of 2, 3 years old. And back then, when Murray Walker was really whilst he was in the sort of equinox of his career, if you will, it was at the same time being able to hear things such as, and also watching video footage back when I got a bit older, such as when Damon Hill won the Formula One championship at Suzuka, and the infamous line from Murray Walker, and now there's a tear in my eye. That level of emotion, and the fact that the thing that I always want to try and echo, which Murray Walker did incredibly well. And I think the chap who recently left Formula One commentary on Channel 4, I can't remember his name for the life of me. But he only recently he got replaced by Alex Jacks and David Coulthard. But
what was it? Ben Edwards, wasn't it? Ben Edwards.
That's the one. Ben Edwards, I think. I think with them, they teleport you away from the world you're sat in. So right now, as I'm talking to you, I can forget about the world around me. So I can forget about the four walls I'm enclosed in, and I become engrossed in what I'm talking about and whatnot. And it's the same with their commentary. You forget that you're watching it on a TV. It's almost as if you are witnessing history. It's just that you are there right at the heart of witnessing that history, rather than just sort of sat there and going, oh, he's going around the corner again. And that's what I want to try and echo in the work that I do. Is what I want to try and achieve is, at the end of the day, when people watch a show for whether it's an hour, 2 hours, I want them for that hour to forget about any troubles they've got in their life, and just, if it can bring a smile and some happiness to their day, then I know I've done something right. Even if it's just one person, it makes it worth it every time.
I'd say, and it's an amazing thing, isn't it? Because you remember certain phrases from a race that make it work. And I remember Ruse saying there about the one on 99 when Damon won the championship. He says, I have to stop talking because I have a lump in my throat.
Yes.
Wasn't it? And it was wonderful. And it was an incredible. That was an amazing race. But there was so many. I remember Monaco, 1992, Senna and Mansell, and those last few laps where I remember Murray Walker saying, and Mansell is catching by 5 seconds a lap, because he had to come in for his pit stop and get new tires, so he thought he had a puncture, and all of that. And then that last lap was incredible. As they it was so close, and they're weaving along, and all the kind of phrases that Murray came out with, as if, because there's one bit when he's coming into the Rascasse, and then and Mansell and Murray says, and he's trying this way and that way, but Senna won't let him pass. As if Senna is going to let him pass, is the great thing. But no, it was it's the emotion that goes into it, and it does get you carried away, and it makes you just think, oh, this is the best sport you can see, and how it all kind of works, isn't it? That and the thing is, in some of the ACC races and even FIA GT Sport races, there've been some fantastic battles, and some really good overtakes. It's how do you, what kind of overtaking do you like to see, or how do you kind of describe a really good overtake?
So for me, the best overtakes come not necessarily right at the end of the race, but when it's going to define the outcome of the race. So I'll give you a really good example, and it can be sometimes just through strategy when the overtake occurs. So in the ACC World Tour, when I commentated round 2 earlier this week, spoiler alert for anybody who doesn't want to hear the outcome of the race before I reveal it. So 3, 2, 1, spoiler alert complete. It is the case that Sebastian Apostel, who took the checkered flag in the end, he had played his strategy out so well versus the drivers he was battling for the win, and in the end he decided he had to undercut his rivals in order to win the race. And you could see it was coming. You could see when he pulled into the pits, that was the sign. And with changing conditions as well, because the circuit went almost dry, and then the rain came back just after his pit stop. And what it meant was that you were on this edge, as though, would Apostel be able to do it by undercutting, or would it be the case that the drivers he was battling with would come out ahead of him? And he came out, and he just came out, I think it was 4 seconds ahead of the rest of the field. And it was the perfect strategic overtake. So I love that. But in terms of overtakes on circuit, I do love watching an overtake round the outside. And there's plenty I've seen, and particularly in iRacing at, I think it's the Circuit Road Atlanta, turn 1. I can't remember the name of the driver. I think it was Stuart P. Taylor, I want to say, from TGC Racing around there. Or I might be thinking of somebody else. But I know a driver there. I think he did a double overtake around the outside. So 2 drivers around the outside at turn 1 at Road Atlanta, which you just don't do. But he managed to pull it off. And it's those kind of overtakes which defy your expectations. Of course, it relies on the drivers who are defending to give the space and show the respect. But, at the end of the day, they're driving on the limit. And even if it is sim racing, you've got to believe it. It's just as much like real world racing, because these guys are taking it that serious. And in real world, in touring car, I've seen it, in Formula 1, I've seen it. It's the case, those overtakes where a driver puts everything on the line, those are the best ones. It's the thing. I remember the first race I did in Thayer's community on the PC, so it was my first ever build up and trying to race, and we were in the Porsche 911 Super Cup. Cup cars it was, and I thought, well, normally the start's probably my best chance of trying to get ahead and trying to make up some places. I was mid to probably late pack. To be fair, there was about 30 of us involved, and I was round about 20th or thereabouts, between 15th and 20th, and I wondered why I hadn't listened to the engineer, that said stay off the curbs, lower tire pressures. I thought I don't need to listen to that. And then as you do when you first start. And of course, I came up at Brands Hatch, and it was on the first corner. And I wondered why everybody was going so slowly. And I thought, God, they're really crawling round the first. So I kind of went straight through and made it, and it looked fantastic going around the first corner. And of course, then I hit the curb going down, and I just came off the gas slightly, and then I had a huge spin, and that was me. So I was the comedy sidekick in that race, because I was the entertainment as my car pirouetted off into the wall and ended up last. But I got going again. But it was quite fun. So I realised that, yes, you actually have to slow down or be careful for the curves when your tyre pressures are low. But it is such good fun, though. That's the thing. And you can have some great laughs. And also avoiding people, because if other people are spinning off all over the place on the first lap or the first few corners, it's a great thing when you manage to get through and not hit anybody and manage to make up some places. What's been some of the best kind of
kind of starts that you've seen, and how do you find commentating on the start of a race?
So the best starts I've typically seen, it depends. If it's a standing start, I always love to see drivers who get a really good launch off the line and gain multiple places in one run up towards turn number one. And well,
Yeah.
some of the best ones I've seen have been in what would be in Gran Turismo Sport. No, actually, no, in fact, it would be in iRacing in the middle of the pack racing league, which I'm commentating on the moment, on their touring car racing championship series, where I've seen some drivers who, with the start, gain a load of places in the run down to the opening corner. Other ones I've seen sort of where rolling starts are concerned, it's normally where you see a driver who's running less downforce, particularly in a set of course of competition, where if they've got less downforce and it's a long run to turn one, such as running down towards Imola's opening corners at the Tamburello chicane, seeing somebody who's got a lot of speed and able to sort of thread their way through all the cars like threading the needle, and they just manage to gain 2-3 places and they come all the way up. Or if there's a sort of incident ahead of them, but they're the one who continues to gain that ground and they gain, say, 6, 7, 8 places in a single stroke. Those are the best ones I've seen. I can't really think of any names off the top of my head, unfortunately, but I've seen a number of them in my time, and it's brilliant. But again, it's one of those things where that driver at that moment, the adrenaline must have been pumping hard.
Yeah. It's like watching Alonso on a start on it whenever he does a race start, isn't it? Because he has an ability to get through the field and come from 12th to 13th, and by the end of the first lap, he's in 7th or something like that, isn't it? And you just watch as he picks through, and I think that's the thing you get to find for people is do they start and they go on the outside, or do they try and overtake on the inside? Isn't it? That's the kind of thing, and they have a particular style. But we've got a question for you from Rice Racing. What would be your ideal race to commentate on? I.e., any particular series or event that would stand out?
So to answer Rice Racing's question, if it was in sim racing, I would love to comment. I'm loving commentating on touring cars at the moment in iRacing in the middle of the pack racing league series. I absolutely adore a touring car. Not to say any other discipline's not great, but at the same time, absolutely loving it. So in sim racing, it would be touring cars. In real world, I would also love to commentate on touring cars. Alternatively, something along the lines of, say, the Ginetta Cup. That would be absolutely fantastic. It's great to see now that they're moving to the Ginetta G56 in the near future. They're going from the G55 platform, and the Ginetta racing is always very intense. I had the pleasure of seeing it at Brands Hatch at the end of last year when they were wrapping up the touring car season, and no, it was brilliant. So those would be my two. It'd be Ginettas in the real world and touring cars in the sim world.
Yeah. No, it's quite a thing. And Rue is just mentioning as well, Alonso and Webber through Eau Rouge and up Radillion to Brest. That was amazing. But they also had a fantastic race at Silverstone, I think, round about the same era as well, where I remember that was incredibly close. And they were coming up the old start-finish straight, and they were neck and neck going around there and coming through. It's not Beckett's. It's that first right-hander that now they go pretty much flat out. And it's amazing how they do it. But yeah, and did you like some of the kind of single-seater racing, like Formula Renault and other stuff? I know they do that on iRacing, but do you find that those kind of races can bring out some quite good overtaking and quite good events?
It's an odd one for me. So sort of open wheel single-seaters, I like watching them. So I love watching Formula One, although I'm taking a hiatus from Formula One this year after the season finale because that was a bit too much for me. But I really do enjoy watching single seater. However, if I was ever offered to drive one, I'm not interested in actually driving a single seater. It just doesn't appeal to me. I like closed wheel machines in terms of driving them. But again, that might be because of the cars I drive. But it's one of those situations whereby I think they're great on TV, but they're not for me. But to commentate on them, to be fair, I'd never say no. I know there's a number of F3 series going around on iRacing at the moment, and they've also got Formula V, so never say never there.
Well, Formula V is hilarious. I remember my first race on that. I ended up doing I kind of flew sideways into the trees because somebody hit me on the tire, and then we launched off. So I got disqualified after that one of my first attempts. But it is. I think Formula V is probably my favourite iRacing race. I've done a little bit on Skip Barber's, and then the Mazda MX-5s are quite good.
The MX-5s are fantastic.
Yeah, you can get some good battles. But I do find that iRacing, maybe not so much with the Mazdas, but on a lot of the cars, it's almost like the brakes, like an on-off switch. It's quite hard to get, it tends to just lock up straight away. Well, in other racing games, you get a little bit more progressive braking, because I know, like on a real racing car, you've got to hit the brakes really hard, and to get the car to slow down initially, to get the speed off, and it shouldn't be locking up when it does that. But that's my kind of one annoyance of iRacing, is that it just seems to lock up the wheels so easily. But
indeed.
yeah, so because obviously I know you get the things you can do with a setup with brake balance and things like that. But how do you find that things like iRacing and ACC compare?
So if I had, because I do a lot of sim racing now on PC. I mean, I started off on Gran Turismo Sport, and if I start there, the one thing I found with Gran Turismo Sport in particular, and I suspect Gran Turismo 7 will continue this trend, albeit obviously it will up the ante as they always want to, Polyphony. I found it's a great way to get into sim racing without losing too much of the attachments, that arcadey feel. And what I mean by that is that you don't have to be studying your craft too much in Gran Turismo Sport to really get a feel for the car and being able to attack certain circuits. And for me, with my background in being a business analyst, I must admit I am an absolute sucker for detail. When you put me into something in regards to that, I'll read every little bit, study every nook and cranny. So when I've then gone to a set of course of competition, firstly, what I found with set of course of competition is that I've had to forget everything I learned in Gran Turismo Sport, particularly the whole turn off traction control, turn off the ABS. No, those are the system for the gentleman racers to enable them to be able to control these beastly heavy machines. And I found with set of course of competition, you really have to. And I'll quote James Baldwin when he put up a video on his YouTube channel. Obviously, James Baldwin being a real world racer now, as well as the world's fastest sim racer. You're almost like trying to force a bathtub for a quarter at times. The weight of the car, and then trying to transition it from full throttle to brakes to turn into apex, then power on exit and accelerate away. You've got to master. It's almost as if you're riding a horse and you've got to rein that horse in and say, no, you are turning left at this corner. We are going down to second gear. We are going to exit on time. And I absolutely love that feel. And meanwhile, with iRacing, it's been odd. I haven't spent as much time on iRacing as I have a set of course of competition. But I feel that iRacing, the cars are a little bit lighter in terms of they feel much more sensitive. And I'm using my experience of GT3 versus GT3 across the three platforms here. I really think it's the case that they feel a bit lighter in iRacing. And as you say yourself, Hugh, with regards to going heavy on the brakes, it feels as though the brakes lock up immediately. And I'm fine with that, but I feel as though that's quite a hard thing to get used to. And the one thing I've done to practice that feel is I've actually spent quite a bit of time driving the Corvette C8 GTE, where those cars aren't allowed to run anti-lock braking systems. It is the case. You have no defense. If you go too heavy on the brake, it's a lock up and you go straight across the road. And there's been some comical moments of that, particularly taking part in some open lobbies with some relatively big names in the world of iRacing. But no, that's been good fun. It's actually disciplined my left foot braking massively, and it's helped me out when I've gone back to a set of course of competition and being able to more fine-tune my inputs between braking and throttle. So I'd say a set of course of competition has been the one that I've enjoyed the most, because I feel as though I'm learning the most out of it. But iRacing, I'm also enjoying. And I think iRacing, if you want something that's really sensitive, that's what you go for. But if you're looking for something that's a bit more forgiving, quote unquote, but forgiving is a bit subjective, a set of course of competition is great. But if you're looking for something that's a bit more arcadey and entry, then Gran Turismo Sport does very well.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Because on ACC, I try and go with the lowest traction control I can get away with, because I find that it's so much better coming out of a corner if you can put it, you're doing the throttle yourself. And because it's very easy if you put it right up, that before you know it, and its standard settings are very high. And it just doesn't accelerate out of a bend, doesn't it? Because it's just not doing anything. So you need to kind of lower it down to get yourself a bit quicker. I think that's probably been one of the main reasons why I've improved in my times, because I'm not waiting for the car to accelerate by it when it chooses to. It's doing it when I tell it to. And that's because you can lose so much time when you're sitting there wondering, especially in the wet, if you go out on a wet setup, and it just won't drive the wheels at all, because it's obviously allowing for a slip. But no, it's great fun. But I do like it. I think, as you say, about iRacing, you've got to put the time in and get used to how the car handles. It's not so much a game where you can just turn up and drive, is it? I think you have to, and that's the problem. You have so many games, and you want to have a go in each one and see what it's like. But I think iRacing doesn't really work like that. You've got to kind of hone the skill of how the cars work.
Most definitely.
Yeah. So what's been your biggest surprise in doing commentary? What's been like one of the nicest things that's happened, or your kind of biggest surprise during a race or an event?
So start off with biggest surprise. The biggest surprise I've ever had is that I've had the opportunity to commentate over real world racers who I absolutely love watching on TV, racing in series that I commentate on.
Wow.
So, for example, Adam Morgan from BTCC, he races in the Mazda MX-5 Cup that I commentate for Next Gen Racing alongside Crest Autosports, Alex Everett. And well, being able to talk about Adam Morgan, actually say the name and know that he's there. Okay, it's virtual, but that's actually brilliant. And also in an actual Chichley Motorsport liveried MX-5, just like as if he was in the Honda. That plus also, for example, being able to commentate over Antonio Giovinazzi, who raced. He did a brief cameo in the Next Gen iRacing GT3 Season 2 at Le Mans, which was absolutely brilliant to see and to have that opportunity. So those have been the biggest surprises. The biggest or the best things that happen, or the things that I really love, it's not really one thing. It's all the people that I get to sort of engage with as part of commentating. So whether it's the drivers, or alternatively the organisers, or even the fans who then send me feedback after saying did a fantastic job, really enjoyed the broadcast, and even the drivers when they come back and say that I can understand when we lost Ayrton Senna from Formula One, one of the things that when I watched back the Senna documentary and also watched a number of the other sort of separate documentaries about is the whole motorsport. It's not just about the 20 or so drivers, but it's about the commentators. It's about all the staff, the mechanics. It's a huge family. And I've heard that term used more and more over the last decade when referring to motorsport, that it's the sort of the F1 paddock, the collective that goes to an event, or it's the Formula One family that goes to an event. It's the same overseas. And it really feels as though I'm part of such a huge family, and I'm very privileged to be part of that. And I say, interacting with so many people, and whether it be some of the younger drivers who I've commentated on, who they got their mums and dads tuning in, watching, and hearing their feedback and saying, "Mum and Dad loved watching it. They thought it was a real world race," or some of the older drivers saying that they really enjoyed it. I mean, for it, I've met the guys at Made for Racing, the team I do racing for, plus also SAS Racing. I'm going to name drop two there, who I do racing with. And while I've met all the guys at Made for Racing in person, I never thought I'd meet them, but we all met up in person at Brands Hatch. And it's being part of such a big family, and that's what I love about it. It's the fact that it really feels special every time I get into the commentary chair, because I'm not doing it for myself. I get paid to do some commentary, I do some voluntary. I couldn't care about the money. It's just being able to be happy, and that's something we all need in our lives. It's something that makes us happy. And commentary for me is the happiest place I could be.
Yeah, it is amazing. I have to admit, it's like, even though you can go ups and downs with like your F1, if you like F1 or not, or a particular championship, it does make it makes the hairs on your back stick up sometimes, especially when you're at a real race, isn't it? And that you hear the engines finally start, and out they come out of the pits, and they finally come past. And but like you were saying earlier with your GT3 cars, and you heard the Audi, and I went to the Blancpain race with David Perel about 3 years ago. I got to meet him, and because I'd interviewed him a couple of times, but he said, "Oh, if you're about, come to the pits," and so I've got a photograph. He's up there behind me there, and one of the ones that.
I'm incredibly jealous.
He's a lovely chap, really decent guy, and I'd managed to get a ticket which allowed me to go onto the pit walk as well, so I could go onto the grid and the whole thing. But I'd missed the signing of the signatures, but he was still there, and things had quietened down. So I was able to go along, and he recognised me straight away. And bear in mind, I think I'd only interviewed him once at that point, and he recognised me straight away. And he said, "Oh yeah, come and get a photograph," and we'll do this. And he chatted away for about 5 minutes, which I thought was lovely. And then, of course, he went on to watch the race. But it's an amazing, the sound of it all. But one thing I'll never forget, and I say it to my guests, it must be boring them silly, but the one Grand Prix I actually saw live was the European Grand Prix in 1993. I saw Senna win at Donington, and that was just it still always brings a tear to your eye, man. It's just everything you remember of that race was just incredible. We were at the Donington Loop at the back, and we saw Schumacher go off into the sand, coming in as he braked too late out of a problem, and of course we saw the first lap, where by the time Senna came past us, he was second, and then he went down the hill. We couldn't see him, and then he came back up, and then he was in the lead. And then that was that. And eventually we saw Hill go past Prost and things like that. So it was the most incredible thing to witness. And I think that's what motorsport does. It's such a you'll never forget the races that you've been to, because they all have an effect on you. And
indeed.
And it's a thing. I mean, how do you? What's your favorite kind of motorsport championship to actually watch?
For me, so it is BTCC. Absolutely love watching British Touring Car Championship. But I think next year, because I have been in the background, we had it recently, the wrap up of the Fanatec World Tour Intercontinental GT Championship. I'm going to be spending a lot of time watching the GT World Challenge in 2022. Yeah. I do love watching that as well. I haven't had the opportunity to see it live like I've seen Touring Car live. So it is a crisscross between those two, but Touring Car always has a special place in my heart for the simple reason it's. I mean, we've got the legendary moments such as John Cleland going for first, the legendary middle finger as Murray Walker turned it away. But I think one of the things that I love about series like that, and also GT World, is that you have drivers out there who are the professionals, but you also have the pro-ams and you have the AMs, or what we also used to refer to as the privateers, or the guy who literally it's him and four mates in a shed. I mean, a little bit of trivia, if you follow Touring Car, and anybody in the chat, as I just looked at the chat there, follows Touring Car, you may know Team Hard Racing. Now, I never realised, but the guy who used to who still runs run the team, a chap named Gillam, I think it's Tony Gillam, I'm not 100% sure the first name, when I used to live in Swanley in Kent, he literally lived down the end of my street. And he was running the team back then as a privateer entry. And now Team Hard has grown into a fully fledged team. They have Nick Hamilton driving for them. And I do believe that they've also got, I think it's, I don't know if it's been confirmed yet, but I do think they may have Bobby Thompson joining them. But I've heard rumors about that. I don't know if that's true, but a number of other drivers as well. And that for me, that's what I love about series. Again, Formula One's fantastic. The premier sport in the world, the best 20 or so drivers. But I love to see pros and then amateurs racing together, because it gives you that inspiration that one day, not necessarily, I'm too old for it now, but you could see one day that, say, if I had a son, for example, or say my best friend as a kid, that could be the next generation. They make their way up very gradually.
Yeah. Now that's the thing. Well, I know you were born in '93. Well, I was watching touring cars at Knockhill in '94, and I saw Gabriele Tarquini go barrel roll off at Dingley Dale, or they call it, on the first couple of corners at Knockhill, in his Alfa Romeo 155. And I remember watching it afterwards on the review with again Murray Walker doing the commentary, and it was quite a crash. I remember seeing the truck bring the car back, but he got out and he walked away. But no, it was a spectacular, and it is great fun. I was up there about 2-3 years ago watching BTCC, and it was great fun. And it seems to be regaining its its success again, and getting quite good crowds and more people watching it. Because in the 90s it was massive when you had all these different, and I think it was a great era. You had the Toyota Corolla, you had the Carina saloons, you had the Alfa Romeos, you had, I think, what else? What was the other one? You had Nissan, you had Volvo Estates, Volvo 850 Estates. 2-3 is saying I was at Knockhill that day as well. Oh my goodness! It was phenomenal, because I think it was like you looked at cars and you thought, I could go and buy one of those.
Precisely.
You could go and buy your Ford Mondeo, and Andy Rouse was driving one of those. It was kind of those things. That some great battles. John Cleland driving a Vauxhall Cavalier, for goodness sake, and then eventually it was I don't know if it was a Vectra after that, but I think it was mainly a Cavalier in those days. It was an amazing battle. And you think, what it is just a stripped out car with a great engine. I remember I watched Mansell race a few times at Donington when he had this big crash with Tiffany Dell. I was there on that day down at Donington, and when he was not happy with that, and he blamed Tiffany Dell for, I don't know if he brake checked him or something, but they had a big argument about that. But no, so it is fantastic. And to be able to do that on a simulator and try and create that is even more impressive. I do love Assetto Corsa, because you can get the Alfa Romeo 155 Q4 touring cars on that, and that's often a race I do like to do. But I'm hoping that maybe Gran Turismo might do a few of them and get some more Alfa Romeos on their list for GT7. That would be quite good to see if they do it, wouldn't it? I think if they could get a good touring car base on that. But similarly, there's a touring car game as well coming out quite soon. supposed to be based on the series. So that could be an interesting one, because they used to have it back in the 90s. Toka Touring Cars was a great game.
Yeah, I remember those on the old PlayStation 1, Toka 1, Toka 2 and whatnot. And we do need a new touring car game, because we shouldn't forget about it. I mean, there's so many touring car series around the world.
Yeah. But it was based on the British touring cars.
Yeah.
And I always remember Toka 2 was excellent, because it had some of the feeder series that was into that. And I had it had some wonderful bugs and things that would happen in that. I did you could do a Formula Ford race, I think. I think it was a Formula Ford types race you could do. And I remember racing at Silverstone, and I touched somebody's wheel coming into the first corner, and they cartwheeled off and crashed. And then the next lap, I kid you not, I came round the corner, and the guy was there next to his car waving his fist at me when I came round. So I thought it was a great, it was definitely a bug or something, or they had programmed it in if you had a big crash or if you caused something. But it was fantastic that the AI would do something like that. But so what are your hopes for GT7 as well, as it's about to come out in a week or so?
So for Gran Turismo 7, I think what I hope for, because obviously we've had a lot of information, and I think the biggest black cloud that most people, and even those watching right now who are looking towards Gran Turismo 7, I think the online aspects, what I hope for is in private lobbies in particular, we just get some more lobby options. And as I was saying to you in the pre-show, Hugh, the thing that I think at the moment that Polyphony really needs to do, they need to give us more options, such as setting the rolling start speed, setting the rolling start distance, also being able to apply ballast to drivers' cars, things on those lines. If we can have those options, then one thing that Gran Turismo Sport does incredibly well outside the FIA races at the moment is it has that pick up and play league racing aspect, where you can have a Sunday league, you can organize it within 5-10 minutes, you and 15 other friends can go racing. And I think just a bit more customization there, and they could be on to, obviously they're targeting moving it back towards single player as well as multiplayer, but if they give us more options in those private lobbies, it will give us more to play with. And in turn, that's one of the things that at the moment, Gran Turismo Sport, we've almost exhausted well, at least I know in the communities I'm part of, whether it be Drivers Room, the GTSRL, so that's Gran Touring Series Racing League, and other communities, we've pretty much exhausted every option that we've got to play around with, that we can't really find a new way to throw BMW M3s around a circuit until we find ways of sort of changing up the start procedure. And that's what we really need in Gran Turismo. So that's my main hope, is more lobby customization. But outside of that, I'm really looking forward to seeing how Gran Turismo 7 handles what is the dynamic weather. I know it's only coming to certain circuits, but that'll be interesting. Plus the time of day transitions. I mean, some people could be listening right now and thinking, well, yeah, but a set of course has already got that by comparison. Well, yeah, it may be the case, but I'll be interested to see how Polyphony Digital handle that, because that's the one thing that is pulling me away from Gran Turismo is the dynamicism of iRacing or a set of course competition. The fact that I can start a race where the track temperature is 21 degrees centigrade, and within half an hour it drops by 2 degrees, and I've got to keep an eye on my tyre pressures. That for me is the kind of racing I personally enjoy, because there's more uncertainty, and I have to be ready for the race distance, and I don't have the sort of expectation the car is always going to handle the same way every time it goes through turns 1 through to 13 at a particular circuit. And that's what I want to see, more of unpredictability. If they can add that, then we're on to a winner.
Yeah, that'll bring a real skill, because I know that some of the guys on ACC, if they've got maybe an engineer with them or people who know the game well, they can get a good setup to try and help them, give them options, isn't it? But that's going to be hard work if you're trying to do that by yourself. To come up, you need to know your stuff. Or on the engineering side, to be able to get your car to last the distance, isn't it? And be able to get the best kind of performance out of it.
That's the thing with one of my best friends who I race with at the moment. We race as part of a little team on a low fuel motorsport and a set of course of competition. He's more of a qualifying driver. He can do a 20-minute sprint faster than I ever will be able to, but I can manage a car compared to him over 60 minutes and still have the car to spare after. And we're training one another in the opposite sort of side of the spectrum to improve. But I like that, because it means that it's not always about being the guy who's the fastest over one lap. It is that unpredictability, because if you can manage a car over 60 minutes, then the guy who's fast out the blocks but struggles after 20 minutes, he's going to be reined right back in. And that's one of the things that Gran Turismo Sport struggles with at the moment, is that you can manage tyres to an extent. And I mean, well, you've had him on the show, Mikhail Zhao, probably the ultimate tyre managing guru of anybody in Gran Turismo Sport, just finds a way to magically make tyres last longer than anybody else and get the pace out of them. And I think that's what we need. We need we need to sort of bring to light the fact that it's not all about the 1 lap race. It is also about the 10 laps and how the cars last.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I think that was the key that I was trying to do in the shorter races that maybe last 15 to 20 minutes is you can have a really good start and then in turn you can, but then you have make mistakes after a few laps and then that's what catches you out and you've got to try and get the consistency right. So by the end of that, 20 minutes, you're still up there. And in that, because it's amazing the amount of mistakes. I was racing on Monday and when you're about 3/4 of the way through, and this was, I think it was like a half an hour race, you could see people making the mistakes. They obviously get a bit tired and then they'd go off and they'd go on the grass and things like that. It was at Oulton Park. And it was, I made up probably 4 or 5 places in the last 10 minutes of the race just because people had gone off. And you try and keep on. But you've got a fan in the chat there. We've got P.O. Sco. He says, Paul Walsh, the greatest commentator ever. And he says, thank you for commentating on GT Fusion.
Oh, that's a story. Oh, goodness me. Okay. If you want a funny story, and hello to you, P.O. Scope, because, well, actually, I should say it to the camera. Good evening, my friend, and it's good to hear from you. So GT Fusion, for the uninitiated, is as I understand it, it is the biggest team versus team championship within the world of Gran Turismo. They've been running it all the way since Gran Turismo 5, and it's in fact 10 years old as of last year. They're going into their 11th year now, moving on to Gran Turismo 7 now. When I did that Club 100 event and Mark Sykes from Next Gen Racing picked me up, also the guys at GT Fusion also, I think, were either participating in it or they alternatively were just watching, and they got in touch with me to say about, can you commentate some of the lobbies in GT Fusion, because you can imagine when they do racing, there's only 6 race weekends over the entire year, but when they do them, there can be upwards of 20 plus lobbies happening in parallel over the course of a weekend. And they asked me to commentate, and I remember, and shout out to Pierre Chatura, who is the chief organizer of the series, and he puts in a huge amount of work behind the scenes. But when he and his colleagues reached out, Zachariah Hamadi as well, they're sort of, can you commentate on this for us? We'll give you all the advertising and everything. And I had to be honest with them because they were saying about all these different sort of overlays and things on those lines. I said to them, you do realize I just literally stream directly from my PlayStation 4 to Twitch. I don't have a capture card or anything along those lines. And I said to them, I'll happily commentate, but I can't put any of that on the screen because it just won't work. And they said, well, we can't have you commentate any of the big lobbies, i.e. sort of the top 3 lobbies on the Sunday, because we need the overlays. But we can, what we can do is instead, we can give you some of the lower lobbies. And what was quite funny was doing some of the sort of lower lobbies in terms of the splits was the fact that we had a lot of people sort of coming over towards those lower lobbies because of the commentary. And I'm not trying to brag, it's just how things worked out. And then on the Sunday, people were sort of, why haven't we got Paul Walsh commentator on this as well? It's because I don't have the ability to do the overlays and all the sponsorship on there. But I'm very pleased to say now that I do have a capture card. I got one 2 years ago, just haven't had the chance to put everything in the same room. Now I do. It's all in this room here. I will be back for GT Fusion this year, and I will be casting Lobby B on Sunday, so the second split. And, well, it's going to be absolutely fantastic at the time ahead. But that's actually one of the hardest stories that I've had in commentating. So many series have wanted on the PlayStation on Gran Turismo Sport for me to have overlays, and I've had to say to them, I can't put it on because I don't have a capture card that I can connect. And it's always been, well, sorry, we need our sponsors put on the screen. And I just think to myself, but shouldn't it be more, I know you've got sponsors, but shouldn't it be more about the commentary and actually getting people involved rather than whether you can put a badge up on the screen? I've never said that to them because I respect them and whatnot. I don't want to be rude. But that's perhaps one of the most miserable parts, is that I've had to wait 2 years to put a tiny black box next to a console.
That's the thing, isn't it? And you have your different boxes. I've got an HD 60S that I use for my PlayStation and things. And it seems to work reasonably well, but that's the thing, isn't it? But now you're kind of taking it to the next level, and it all kind of goes through. Now, of course, your YouTube channel, which of course we have a link for in the description here for not just YouTube but your Twitch as well. So if you're wanting to subscribe, which I would strongly encourage you to do for Paul's channels, the links are there for you to click onto his channels and be able to subscribe there, as well as our channel here. And of course, if you haven't already seen our channel and our history and our catalogue of interviews, we've got probably nearly 100 at least interviews now with lots of the main big streamers and characters from sim racing. So you're more than welcome to go and check them all out. And if you like what you see, then please subscribe to the channel. That would be fantastic. Now, we have got another fan in the chat here from NXGN Ultra. Nice to see a face to the voice of Paul.
Hello, Kevin. That's I think that's Kevin Smith, Next Gen Ultra from Next Gen Racing. And good evening to you, sir. I didn't know you hadn't seen my face already, but now you can.
Yes, that's it. Now you can get a picture. Now you know who it is that you're working with. But no, it's fantastic. So is there anything you would like to say to your community and to your friends here today who are watching as to your great community? Because you've got over 4,000, I saw their subscribers, which is a great success on YouTube. So many congratulations on managing to get monetized, which so many of us are trying to do, but have failed so far to do. But we're getting there. So what would you like to say to your community?
Oh, goodness. Well, firstly, thank you, Hugh. It's been a lot of work in the making, but what I would say to everyone is I'm very grateful to be where I am. So all of you watching right now, and obviously I'm going to give it, there's so many leagues I've commentated on, so many people I've met, I can't name all of them, but obviously to my best friends who I'll refer to via their online names rather than their real names because I don't want to embarrass them, but first and foremost, the Cypher Wolf, perhaps the person who's been my rock in the darkest of days when things have gone wrong and has been there and supported me through everything that I've gone through to get to where I am currently and is continuing to do so day and day. And well, I absolutely love you for everything you do, Cypher Wolf. And well, if you watch this, thank you for everything. Also to Xeno Predator, Scorpion on Fire, Zeron, MB Hatred, and also Sui Lurb. That's just named the closest people. Also Made for Racing, all the guys in the team there in SAS Racing, some fantastic people through and through, all fantastic. But again, I can't thank everyone because we'd be here for too long. But what I'd say to everyone is that just keep in mind at the end of the day, I do commentary in my spare time, and I do it because I love it. I have to work a day job, and I do that because I enjoy my job, but also because it pays the bills. But in life, if there is something you enjoy, don't give up on it. Chase what your heart enjoys in life, and remember why you do things at the end of the day. Remind yourself that at the end of the day, you've got to have some fun in your life, because if you don't have fun in your life, then you end up becoming old and miserable like me. Well, no, but no, in all seriousness, sometimes it's about the little things that matter. And if you're ever looking to get into the world of commentating, don't do it because you want to get money. Don't do it because you want to turn it into a job one day. That is my goal. My long-term goal is one day to be able to drop my day job and become a commentator through and through. But even if I don't achieve that, the road I go on right now, and I don't know where it takes me, it's taken me to some wonderful places already. I'm in it for the ride, and I love it. And that's what I'd recommend to everyone. That's the message I'd say. Enjoy life, enjoy what you do, and at the same time, if your heart's telling you to do something, go for it, because that's how it all started for me. Literally because I said I can do a better job than that, and I got told to prove it, and then my heart said, you know what, I really enjoyed doing it, let's keep going. And don't ever stop that pursuit.
Oh, fantastic. And definitely great advice there for all budding commentators and also budding motorsport enthusiasts, because sim racing has given us great opportunities that we never thought we'd ever have before. And there's a little message there from Pio Sco saying, Paul, how do you do it? How do you remember every little detail while commentating? You must have a photographic memory.
I think the best way, so you can't remember everything. That's the thing. It's weird. So when I'm building up to commentate, if I've got a grid of, say, 20 drivers, I know I'm not going to remember every name, and I know I'm not going to remember the pronunciation of every name. And, if the guys at Racing Team Astra who've competed in the Next Gen iRacing series are watching right now, they'll remember when I pronounced one member of their team, a chap named South African chap named Sean Skitter, who I used to refer to as Sean Shoot and then Sean Scoot. And I kept butchering his name every time. You're always going to get things wrong, but each time you come back, you remember something more, and that's the thing. I think I have an attention to detail that enables me to remember a lot of things by default. But don't be afraid that you're going to forget something. Or midway through commentary, if you forget who's leading the race, and I've done it multiple times. Even now, a couple of nights ago, I made the mistake of saying that this person was in first place when they were clearly in second. Mistakes are going to happen. They do it in the real world. Murray Walker was the master of mistakes. He could make 101 mistakes, but nobody cared because he was Murray Walker, because he could keep you entertained. And if Murray can do that, then you can do it as well. That's the thing. remembering is about keep practicing it, keep doing it, and you will improve your memory over time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just about keep on going at it. That's the key thing.
Yeah, it's when you have similar names. We've got a Mark Lewis and a Mike Lawson, or so. I don't know what's his. That shows you the name's gone. But Emma was trying to make a point, and it's gone. And trying to do, but when you have similar names and all these names, and you're trying to work out, it says who's leading the race, and quite often we've got it wrong. And I did say before in one of in the build up, I ended up pronouncing what I thought was a French name, and I thought it was actually a woman when it was actually a man. And the chap came back to me on Discord. That's right, Mike Williams. That's what it is. And saying that as it was very, very funny, being the highest lady in the race, other than Tia, it was actually a man. So that was the issue. But no, it's something. That's the fun you can have. I suppose with commentary, you make a few mistakes here and there, but everyone sees the good side of it. Hopefully, when it all comes out there. But look, Paul, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show tonight. Thank you very much for being a guest. Please stay on the line as we close up just now. But now I wonder, have you heard our motto on the Car Sim and Race Driver Show?
Oh, go on.
It is. Oh, it used to go. To be fair, most of the time it has been this. It has been drive fast and try not to crash. And because this is the one. And if you do, you might just win the race at the first corner. But now that I'm a bus driver, you see, I've upgraded it. I've changed it, and it says drive fast, but drive your bus even faster. So that's the one. So I'm sure that's a responsible way for public transport. But so that's the thing. But no, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on the show, and we wish you all the best for a fantastic year and career in commentating. We can tell in your voice that you've got massive enthusiasm for racing, which is exactly what you need. And I'm sure we'll see you get to even greater heights as what you've done already. And we've really enjoyed having you on the show. This will come as a podcast, so if you want to listen to it in the car in the next few days or so, I'll get that sorted out, and it's recorded live. So everything will be on it. There's nothing taken out of it. So that's the thing. But thank you very much to everyone who's been in the chat tonight and who's been watching, and who'll be listening to this on the podcast in a few days' time. But my special guest today is Paul Walsh. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, Hugh, and thank you for having me. And thank you to everyone for the comments, the questions, and for tuning in. It's great to be here. It always is. Let's keep on pushing, guys.
Fantastic. Take care, everyone. Drive fast, but drive your bus even faster. Bye just now.